Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This show is being recorded on Monday, February 14, 2022. Initially, we wanted to record this yesterday, Sunday, February 13, but there was the earthquake in northern Armenia just 15 to 20 minutes before we started the show, and our colleagues needed to basically look after their family, friends, loved ones. Interestingly, exactly 1 year ago to the day, February 13, there was another earthquake in Armenia. I think, Hovik, that was in Nubarashen?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So Hovik Manucharyan and I, we're going to talk about the following topics this week. Hovik, do you want to tell us the topics?
And here's what we have for you this week. 8 more POWs were released, but at what cost? This week, with the mediation of EU, 8 more of our prisoners were released by Azerbaijan. At the same time, EU approved a financial aid package for Baku totaling 2 billion euros. What's the deal?
We'll talk about the Parliamentary Commission on the 44-day war, which was finally established. It seems that there's some movement finally in the National Assembly to start investigating the war, but the opposition is going to be boycotting it. So what is to be expected from this commission?
An authoritarian power grab continues, while the EU praises Armenia. We'll talk about the continuing saga of jailed opposition mayors and persecution of those judges who would release them. The opposition also tried to shine a spotlight this week on EU ambassador to Armenia, who has refused to speak out against these undemocratic processes.
We'll talk about the shitstorm that Lukashenko raised by asking, who needs Armenia?
Lastly, there is a new MPG poll of Yerevan residents. What do Yerevan residents think about Hovik Manucharyan's ouster? And other topics. We'll go over some of the interesting results.
So today we have with us Benyamin Poghosyan, who is the chairman of the Yerevan-based think tank Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. Hello, Benyamin. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Hi, Benjamin. Events in and around Armenia are accelerating on a weekly basis. While keeping our eye on the global developments related to Russia versus the West standoff and the crisis around Ukraine, we will focus mostly on internal events, despite troubling media fear-mongering around the possible war in Ukraine. Just today, Biden said the door to diplomacy is still open, as if a countdown clock to war has started. Let's begin with the 8 Armenian POWs. On Friday, February 4, Pashinyan and Aliyev had a teleconference summit facilitated by French President Emmanuel Macron and European Council President Charles Michel. Following this, on Monday, February 7, Azerbaijan released 8 Armenian POWs, 4 servicemen who were captured in November 2021 and 4 in December 2020 after the official end of the 44-day war. Note that Azerbaijan has repeatedly stated that there are no prisoners of war in its custody, yet more and more turn up as part of negotiations. What were the topics discussed at the summit on February 4, Benjamin?
Okay, my understanding is that the attention was focused on so-called humanitarian issues, not only about the issue of POV, but also about the remains of persons who got missed or who were killed during the first Nagorno-Karabakh war. And we also had the statement of Prime Minister Pashinyan that Armenia returned more than 100 remains of Azerbaijani missing persons from the first Karabakh war. My understanding is that these agreements were reached during this phone call. So I don't believe that there were some discussions on political issues or on the future of Nagorno-Karabakh, especially under the circumstances when President Aliyev clearly states that for him there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, and which means that there is no status of Nagorno-Karabakh, and he is not going to discuss these non-existing issues. I cannot exclude that the fate of the agreements reached during November 26, 2021 Sochi and December 14, 2021 Brussels meetings were discussed, because interestingly, after the Brussels meeting, there was an understanding that, okay, sides reached a clear agreement at least to launch this Soviet-era railway, which will connect Azerbaijan with Nakhichevan via Syunik and Armenia with Iran via Nakhichevan, but potentially Armenia with Russia, again, via Azerbaijan. And then in Armenia, a special working group was established, chaired by our former ambassador in Islamic Republic of Iran, to deal with this construction or reconstruction of this railway, 1 kilometer of railway from Yeras until border to Nakhchivan, and 45 kilometer of railway along Arax River in Megre. But then recently, Prime Minister Pashinyan made a statement that Armenia will start reconstruction on its territory only if some sort of agreement will be signed with Azerbaijan regarding the functionality of this railway. And this approach was confirmed also yesterday or 2 days ago by Artashes Tumanyan itself, the former ambassador in Iran, who chairs this commission, and who stated that yes, Armenia believes that some sort of agreement, either bilateral or multilateral, should be signed, which should regulate the modalities of the functioning of this railway. I mean, Azerbaijan, Sunik, Nakhchivan railway. And only after agreement is signed, Armenia will start the reconstruction of the railway. And also from Azerbaijani side, from Azerbaijani MFA, we have a statement which accused Armenia of trying to not to implement or thwart the agreement regarding the unblocking of transportation routes, and in particular the construction or reconstruction of this Azerbaijan Sunik Nakhchivan railway. So I don't exclude that also this issue was somehow touched during this video conference between President Aliyev, Prime Minister Pashinyan, President Macron, and President of European Council Charles Michel. Right. But again, I don't believe that any political issues like when, if not itself the future of Nagorno-Karabakh, but at least when the negotiations are going to be resumed for the final comprehensive settlement of Karabakh conflict, I don't believe that even this issue was discussed. Of course, we have the statements by European Union and also by Minsk Group co-chairs that yes, Karabakh conflict still needs a comprehensive solution, but everybody understands that President Aliyev will reject this, and no one is interested or have any interest or even a power to force President Azerbaijan to change his mind. So I am afraid that this will continue, this type of discussion, either in this trilateral format of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, or trilateral format of Armenia, Azerbaijan, European Union, or multilateral formats. The discussions will be focused on humanitarian issues and maybe on the unblocking of transportation routes.
Benyamin, right after that meeting, the EU announced a 2 billion financial aid package for Azerbaijan. It almost feels to me like it's a quid pro quo to continue negotiating through the West rather than Russia. Do you think there's any kind of a cause and effect here?
No, frankly speaking, I don't believe that we have the competition, at least between EU and Russia in the South Caucasus. Because look, every time when Macron made some steps or Charles Michel made some steps, they preliminarily had phone calls with President Putin. And during every discussions which Macron held with Putin either via phones or during their face-to-face meeting on February 7, despite much attention was focused on Ukraine and in general Russia-West standoff and this transformation of European security architecture. But both President Putin and Macron discussed also the Karabakh issue. So I believe that at least from France and European Union perspective, there is no competition somehow to create alternative platform, try to replace Russia or support Russian efforts. But I have an understanding that there is some preliminary agreed or at least discussed policy or strategy implemented by Russia and the European Union, and in particular, and also France as a separate country, because European Union, France, and also Russia, they all are interested in stable South Caucasus. This is my understanding. So I don't think that there is a competition between EU, Russia, or France, Russia for this negotiation process, even on humanitarian issues or on unblocking the communications. So I don't think that, European Union, let's put it this way, was ready to provide some bribe to Azerbaijan so that Azerbaijan will continue the negotiations on this separate track or separate platform, which EU thinks will somehow diminish the role of Russia or push Russia out of the South Caucasus. We all know that President Aliyev was very critical about European Union decision to provide financial package of up to 2.6 billion euros to Armenia, while only promising Azerbaijan even less than 100 million euro financial package. First of all, let's clarify that we are not speaking about financial aid. We are speaking about financial package.
That's right.
And for example, from this 2.6 billion euros, which theoretically will be offered to Armenia, only 200 million euros are grants or aid. And this money are for 5 years, which means that every year Armenia will receive up to 40 million euros of European assistance. Of course, this is quite big money, but we are not able to say that 40 million euros per year is a life-changing event for Armenia.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining 2.4 billion euros, they will be either loans or guarantees of loans. For example, the European Union are telling Armenia, okay, go and negotiate with World Bank, International Monetary Fund, Asian Development Bank, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, European Investment Bank, negotiate for some loans under some concrete projects. And if they are ready to provide you loans, but the problem is that there is no guarantee, then we are ready to provide guarantees. And there is no clear understanding, will Armenia be ready to negotiate this amount of loans for concrete projects so that European Union can provide guarantees. So at the end of the day, I will not be surprised that this financial package, which will be much less than 2.6 billion euros. Yes, we will receive these 200 million grants, but I don't exclude that at the end of the day, these loans or guarantees of loans will be much less than 2.4 billion euros. And same applies for Azerbaijan. But in any case, I don't exclude that. And now when a European Union thinks that Azerbaijan may play a very tiny, but at least very small, but at least some role in increasing some gas supplies to European Union, if not immediately, but in the midterm perspective, like within 5-year perspective, I don't exclude that during these negotiations, and we know that this Ministerial Council of Southern Gas Corridor took place in Azerbaijan recently. I believe that Azerbaijan could use this card. So, okay, if European Union wants Azerbaijan to export more gas to European Union, then please provide us even not money, but provide us more promise of financial package. Because I know that there was a criticism also against President Aliyev in Azerbaijan that, okay, how it happens that the European Union at least promises financial package of 2.6 billion to Armenia and only less than 200 million euros to Azerbaijan.
Benyamin, you mentioned that there's almost no daylight between Russia and the EU and France. They're all in a confluence of diplomacy about keeping the region very stable. Where's the US in all this?
Very good question. Okay, general US has very clear strategy. It's called containment strategy. So in that point, the United States returned to the Cold War rhetoric. We all know this containment and deterrence strategy developed by Mr. Kennan and his famous article published in 1947 in Foreign Affairs. After 1991, the United States dropped this containment and deterrence strategy and embraced strategy of engagement in enlargement, and NATO enlargement, and also full support to EU enlargement. But apparently, starting from second term of President Obama, and especially under the President Trump, United States start to develop this notion of great power competition, that okay, the unipolar world is finished or is going to be finished, and US should be ready for long-term competition with other global powers, especially with China and Russia. And now my understanding is the United States seeks to pursue simultaneously double containment policy, both against China and against Russia. How is this possible, or can this be successful, is a very difficult issue to answer. Okay. Maybe we need to bring Mr. Kissinger here, but not in current age, but when he was much younger, to give some reasonable answers to this. Mm-hmm. But from American perspective, I believe United States wants to contain Russia. And what does it mean to contain Russia? It means also to weaken Russian influence in the post-Soviet space, because Russia itself views post-Soviet space as its legitimate, as a zone of its spatial interest or its legitimate interest. But the United States is interested to see weaker Russia or less Russian influence in post-Soviet space, including South Caucasus. So from that perspective, United States wants less Russia in Armenia, less Russia in Azerbaijan. Of course, the United States does not want to see more Russia in Georgia, because there is less Russia in Georgia now due to this Abkhazian South Ossetia issue. So from that perspective, I believe from American point of view, I even don't exclude that Americans can now discuss with President Aliyev that, okay, please pretend that you are ready to create very normal conditions for Armenians if they will agree to accept Azerbaijani passports and live under Azerbaijan. I don't exclude that even Americans may advise Aliyev, okay, allow some Armenians come back to Shushi and Hadrut with Azerbaijani passports, create for them excellent conditions, even open some Armenian schools there, and then say Armenians living in Stepanakert, Martuni, Askerian, that look, guys, now you are receiving, I don't know, $100 of pensions and $300 of salaries, but look, some Armenians living in Shushi and Hadrut, and they are receiving $500 of pensions and $1,000 of salaries. So please, you can enjoy your life as an Azerbaijani citizens. And in that case, Americans may intervene and say to Russians, okay, guys, because there is no conflict, Armenians are happy to live with Azerbaijani passports. So please get out from Azerbaijan, because yes, US is interested to see as less Russia as possible, both in Azerbaijan and Armenia. But how they can kick out the Russian peacekeepers from Karabakh? Definitely, they are not going to fight Russians, and definitely Azerbaijan is not so crazy to fight the Russian peacekeepers itself. So the only way to kick out the Russian peacekeepers in a short and mid-term perspective is to persuade Azerbaijan that, okay, try convince Armenians that they may have a very happy life as an Azerbaijani citizen having Azerbaijani passports. So I will not be surprised if after some years there will be another WikiLeaks and we'll see these cables about discussions between Azerbaijani and American officials and Americans trying to convince Azerbaijan that, okay, bring some Armenians back to Shushi and Hadrut with Azerbaijani passports, create good conditions for them, and then use this as an example to also convince Armenians in Stepanakert to accept Azerbaijani citizenship, and then use this to say to Russians that, okay, we thank you very much, you stopped the war, we are really very thankful, but sorry guys, there is no need for you, because if there are peacekeepers, there should be a conflict. But if there is no conflict, why we need peacekeepers?
This is going back to something previously you mentioned. In the parliament speech that Pashinyan talked about the railway negotiations, he mentioned something which caught my ear, which was, he said that, yes, of course, first of all, we want to have an agreement before we start building, but also that agreement may or may not come to the parliament for ratification. I don't know if that you paid attention to that part and what the implications are. Under what conditions would an international agreement require to be presented to Parliament for ratification?
According to my knowledge, any international agreement requires parliamentary ratification. And that is why, for example, all documents signed after the Karabakh Wars, they are not agreements, they are statements. They are actually agreements in their substance, but they call the statements to avoid this parliamentary ratification process. So if we speak about agreements, international agreements, they must be ratified in parliament and they must be confirmed by constitutional court that they are in accordance with Armenian constitution. So if we speak about agreements, there are no constitutional way, at least under the current constitution. Okay, we know that now Pashinyan initiated a process of amendment of constitution and he hoped to receive some concept until end of this year and the draft of the new constitution until end of June 2023. But at least according to the current constitution, if it's international agreement, first it must be ratified in parliament, and second it must be confirmed or approved by the constitutional court.
He did stress. He said he believed that ratification may not be necessary. He said he probably won't be necessary, but I'm just wondering if there are elements that are being discussed which would trigger ratification, and what if we can speculate what those may be.
Okay, I don't exclude that at the end of the day there will be some agreement which will be packaged as a statement, because again, for example, the November 10th statement has a very clear element of agreement regarding territorial changes, territorial withdrawal, etc., etc. But unfortunately, in current Armenia, the packaging and substance are very different. You can have agreement and package it as a statement. You can have statement and package it as an agreement. So we have a wide field of manipulation. So at the end of the day, I cannot exclude that maybe there will be something like an agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or maybe even trilateral between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia. But again, it will be packaged as a statement to avoid parliamentary ratification. Also,
I think that would be preferred by Pashinyan.
Mostly, yes. Also, let's not forget that Pashinyan controls parliament. I mean, the civic contract has 70 or 71 MPs from 107 parliamentarians. So why he should be afraid of parliamentary ratification? Only if this text will be totally in violation of Armenian national interest. They simply would not like to give an opposition to trigger some protests or etc. etc.
Yeah. Okay. This week, more than 6 months into his term, the National Assembly appears to finally be moving towards creating a commission to investigate the 44-day war. The media and the public were first informed about this not through the media department of the National Assembly or Andranik Kocharyan, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Defense and Security, under whose auspices the commission is set to be slated for creation. Instead, it was announced on Thursday afternoon on the Facebook page of the Civil Contract Party. Azat Utun reported the following day that the commission will be comprised of 11 members. 7 of the seats will go to civil contract, and 4 of the seats are slated for the parliamentary opposition, who immediately announced that they would boycott the commission since this format will not allow a balanced investigation and will only be used to whitewash and cover up the activities of the current regime. There were other ideas on how to do this, and I quickly want to sort of go over them. In our podcast number 82, we discussed with expert scholars who suggested that the independent fact-finding commission may be more appropriate. We also know that Edmund Marukian from Bright Armenia Party suggested a parity-based fact-finding commission, highlighting the equality of voice between different parties on the commission. And meanwhile, the parliamentary opposition argued that even if such a commission is created within the framework of the Standing Committee on Defense and Security, it should be led by the opposition in order to maintain checks and balances, something which they argue is the essence of parliamentary democracies. What expectations could we have of this commission, Benyamin?
Okay, there is a famous song, "The Show Must Go On." I believe it's a Queen song. So, if a very short answer, this parliamentary commission resembles me the song that show must go on. And secondly, I believe in ancient Rome, there was this saying that people or ordinary people need bread and joy, or bread and party.
It's called bread and
circuses.
Yes, bread and circuses. So unfortunately, bread is more and more difficult to obtain in Armenia because we have inflation and etc. etc.
So and more circuses.
Circuses also, we have less and less circuses because Mr. Kocharyan is not in prison for more than 1.5 years. Mr. Serge Sarkisyan was never in prison. For example, several people who have been in prison, they have been freed. General Mamad Grigoryan died. So less bread and less circuses. And because for government it's very difficult to provide bread or additional or necessary bread, now they decided, okay, we need somehow to boost the circus part. This commission is fully in line with this circus part, because if we speak seriously, I remember that something like maybe 7 years ago, it was in 2015, there was in Armenia, a special commission was established to counter corruption, something like anti-corruption commission and etc., which was chaired by then Prime Minister Hovik Manucharyan, who was allegedly perceived as one of the top corruptioners in Armenia. And at that time, no one in Armenia was serious that, okay, this anti-corruption commission chaired by Hovik Manucharyan could successfully fight against corruption. And by the way, many persons who are now in the government and sitting in the parliament as a representative ruling party, they were telling that, okay, how is it possible if we all have great doubts? Okay, there were no facts, but we have great doubts that Mr. Abrahamian or his friends or his associates involved in corruption deals. How Mr. Abrahamian can fight against himself? So it's not possible. And I am surprised that now these people are telling that, okay, for example, Mr. Pashinyan is able to fight himself, because we all know that there are doubts against government activities or inactivities, or actions or inactions, before the war, during the war, and after the war. And but the parliamentary commission and the parliament itself is fully controlled by prime minister. So if theoretically we believe that prime minister itself has made mistakes or something like that, it means that the prime
crimes,
should,
right?
Or maybe crimes, it means that prime minister should fight against himself. to clarify or to find out did he make crimes or not. It sounds very strange, frankly speaking. So I don't think that anyone accept anything from this commission. And regarding the opposition, my understanding is that at least both second and third presidents, they know almost everything. Why war happened, why they did something, what Pashinyan did not do. So to argue that, okay, Mr. Robert Kocharian and Ser Sargsyan need some parliamentary commission to have better understanding what happened, why happened, and what is going to happen, this is also not serious for me. So again, this whole issue of commission, and this could be like, we know that there are these movies or soap operas with seasons, season first, season two, season three, like Mr. Andrane Kocharan already has stated that, okay, the commission will work for 6 months, but theoretically it can be work for another 6 months. So I believe that we will have the commission season 1, then we will have the commission season 2, maybe the commission season 3. So I don't think that this is anything else than attempts to create or to cover the lack of circus and also cover the lack of bread.
Maybe we can have these series on Netflix.
Yes, at the end of the day, maybe.
If it seems to me that if there's a change of government at some point, there may be a new commission formed, because I think that there's good reason to not let go of this issue of fact-finding, real fact-finding about this war. I mean, this was a disaster, and we have not learned any lessons from it as far as I can tell so far.
I fully agree with you. This was a disaster, but the problem here is that because we all understand that, okay, the current government, I mean the government which took the power in May 2018, made terrible mistakes. I mean, even they are not arguing against that, but simply they are telling that we are responsible but not guilty, or we are guilty but not responsible. But also it's obvious that what happened in 2020 is this national disaster to Armenian nations, the most terrible thing after the 1920 Armenia-Turkey war. No one can say that the only reason or only reasons were the actions or inactions of the government which took power in May 2018.
Yeah,
this was a cumulative effect of terrible mistake of third president, second president, and even first president. But the problem is that now these 4 people, I mean, these 3 presidents and current prime minister, they dominate the political field. And the next government, even if they will not come themselves personally, like becoming a prime minister or president, if Armenia will make another change in form of government and will become a semi-presidential or presidential republic. So this potentially new government, which will not be formed by civic contract, I'm afraid it will have close connections either to second president or third president or to their associates. And because they also made significant mistakes. So in that case, again, no one can believe that, for example, if the associates of third president controlling the parliament several years from now, becoming prime minister or even president, they will be able to pursue the truth. So I'm afraid we are in a vicious circle, that the current commission definitely is not going to be an honest broker, but I have great doubts that any government which will have connections with second or third president, this commission or these actions to find out truth will not be politicized. And in that case, you may ask, okay, what's the solution here? I'm afraid the solution here to wait for some 20-25 years, hopefully have no one which is associated to the second and third president, and then come back to this issue if this makes sense. If this not makes sense, it means that regardless, we will have the only one commission which was just established, I believe, today, or we will have another commission after the change of government. These commissions will be politicized, and these commissions will work within this circus-bred circle.
In fact, early on, the parliamentary opposition was also offering to maybe just sort of, continue these investigations within the different ministries, such as defense and national security, because there seem to be parallel investigations going on anyway, in hope for them to be useful in the future. To me, at least, it seems like maybe we should prioritize, on having these investigations within the ministries of their competence in order to minimize this political blame games in Parliament.
I think those would still be politicized because they are subject to government oversight, right? Because they're ministries. What about when we talked to Simon Saragian and Arthur Mardirosyan, and they were suggesting an independent advisory commission, basically, that does its own fact finding and everything, but then just feeds it back?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, as Benjamin seems to say, there is no likelihood of this happening. And
I
at
agree.
least for the next 2-3 decades, this war is going to be something like October 27, where we don't know what happened. And we probably, I fear that we never may. But what was interesting, I think the only thing we can speculate on is we can't speculate, we can't talk about the commission. But I guess what was interesting to me is the civil contract, made this a point of their platform that we're going to immediately launch an investigation as soon as we come to power. But then for 6-7 months, delayed this process, which to me indicates that this issue of circus. They don't want to get to the truth. They want to drag this out as much as possible. For instance, for a long time, civil contract blamed not starting the commission, not creating the commission, on the fact that they don't have a vice chairperson for the standing Committee on Defense and Security. But at the same time, 17 times in a row, they rejected the opposition's nominee, Artur Ghazinyan, as a deputy as a vice chairperson. Without then, it's a secret vote, so we don't know why. But it was like rejected all the time, and it said, bring us someone new. But the opposition said, our right is to nominate someone. So it seems like a stalemate that was artificially created in order to delay this this move that we have today. Do you think that, so I wanted to ask Benjamin, and we can move on quickly because I don't think this is worth our time, but do you think that there was more to this? There was really a requirement for the vice chairman position, and that was something special that needed to happen? Or was this indeed intended to drag out this process? And what was the reason for delay, in your opinion, Benjamin?
Well, I'm not sure about legal requirements. Was it possible to create this commission without having the deputy chairperson of this commission or no? I cannot say definitely yes or no. But regarding, by the way, of this issue of not appointing the nominee of opposition, it shows that how much politics is personified in Armenia, and how much it's not only personified, but also how this personal feelings, perceptions, ambitions, patience, plays much more decisive roles than the state in interest and thought about state interests. This is really very strange. Also, which, by the way, shows how poor our political situation, our political system, and our politics are. Because 1905, I'm afraid even 99% of politics in Armenia is based on personal. I like him, I dislike him. Okay, I dislike him because he did something bad to me. I don't know, he prevented me from get a tender, or he didn't appoint me to this position, or he fired me, my friend. And everything is concentrated on personal offenses, likes and dislikes. And this is a main motive of actions by politicians, which itself is will have and is having the catastrophic effects on Armenia.
All right, let's move to our next topic. The Armenian Court of Appeals decided last week to not release Arush Arushanyan, the mayor of Goris, who was re-elected in June 2021, out of jail. The court also decided to not release the re-elected mayor of Vanadzor, Mamigon Aslanyan. Both politicians endorsed Hayastan Alliance during the 21 elections, and since then they've been hounded with various charges of vote buying, corruption, and so on. There are 3 other elected mayors who have been released. Manvel Paramazyan was released and then re-jailed, and the judge who made the decision to release Paramazyan and subsequently Ashot Minasyan as well was arrested under what many argue are trumped-up charges. So the question, Benyamin, is outgoing Ombudsman Arman Tatoyan has spoken against these jailings and pointed to the government for denying the rights of duly elected opposition leaders. And the opposition is up in arms, and more than once now Armenia has been slammed by Freedom House NGO for its degraded democracy due to the government. Where is all this headed, do you think?
Okay, my understanding is that we see growing authoritarian tendencies, authoritarian in terms of liberal democracy. Like, okay,
Yeah,
if you are viewing from the point of liberal democracy, sitting somewhere in Brussels, in Washington, also is debatable. Can we accept that Washington is a heart and center and beacon of liberal democracy? But it's
we have
totally
moved
different
back to the
issue.
South Caucasus.
Yeah, but again, if you look through the prism of liberal democracy, we cannot not to accept that yes, there are some authoritarian tendencies in Armenia after the war, and especially during and after these local elections, because regardless of the legal basis of these criminal cases against re-elected mayors like Goris Mayor, Vanador Mayor, and others, the fact is fact that, for example, the re-elected mayor of Vanador was arrested and is under the criminal investigation only when he got a victory against the civic contract party. So conventional wisdom tells us that maybe if, this person was not going to participate in any elections, even he was guilty of some criminal actions in the past, he was not going to have any problems. And also this issue with this judge of Bakshian, again, regardless of the legal issues, because we are not legal experts, we are not lawyers, so we cannot argue for or against this legal basis of what is happening. But politically, it's very strange coincidences, and usually there is a very little chances that these are coincidences. That, for example, the judge makes a decision which could offend or really offend or insults a ruling establishment, and then immediately he's being arrested, even if his arrest is fully in line with
Right.
laws and norms. Also,
Yeah.
his lawyers are arguing that no, many other lawyers or academicians, I mean, doctor of laws, arguing that this is a nonsense. But okay, let's not discuss this issue because again, we are not lawyers, so what we are selling is not an expert opinion. But at least the coincidences are very strange. And
Yeah.
this definitely gives us at least a sound base to claim that there are some authoritarian tendencies if we look it from the perspective of Western liberal democracy in Armenia. At least this is my assessment.
Speaking of judges, this week the Civil Contract Controlled Parliament held a short session with a few items on the agenda. As part of the last minute amendments, the ruling regime made changes to the law governing how the Supreme Judicial Council can discipline judges. Previously, the SJC required 7 out of 10 judges in order to allow for criminal prosecution of judges in Armenia. Now the threshold has been reduced to only 5. It should be noted that 5 of the SJC members are nominated by Parliament, while the other 5 are elected by the judges themselves. This move effectively gives the Parliament-appointed judges the potential to help initiate criminal proceedings, which the opposition claims will be used to harass and persecute judges who may fall out of line with the ruling regime. This happened only 2 days after Judge Bakshian was arrested, allegedly in retaliation for freeing Asbed Bedrossian and Paramazyan. To learn more about the Bakshian case, refer to episode 117, where we discussed this issue with Ruben Melikian, former Human Rights Ombudsman of Artsakh. Benyamin, this seems to be a real blow to judicial independence in Armenia. What is motivating Pashinyan and Civil Contract to be so obsessed with absolute control? And is there a legitimate reason for making such changes?
Okay, my understanding is that when this as Supreme Judicial Council made a unanimous decision to allow for the criminal prosecution and then arrest of this judge, Bakhshian, there was a resentment among judges, and even there were rumors that judges are going to convene the new General Council of Judges and cancel the election of these 5 judges and re-elect new ones. And so this was a real threat to the judge members of the Supreme Judicial Council that, okay, if you will continue to unanimously accept the National Security Service or General Prosecutor General demands or requests for criminal prosecution and even arrest of judges, then you may be called back from your positions and new judges may be appointed, which means that next time the judge members of Supreme Judicial Council will be more careful to vote yes or no. So my understanding is that the government also understands this, that maybe at the next time when they will need, theoretically, they will need to put a pressure on some judge, they will not be able to get this unanimous support. And if the judge members of the Supreme Judicial Council are not going to vote, the current law simply will prevent the prosecutor general to launch a criminal investigation against any judge, because as you mentioned, they need 7 votes. So they decided, okay, because we cannot be 100% confident on judges' votes, let's change the ruling so that we will be able to do this based only the so-called scientists or academician lawyers, which are being elected by parliament and which definitely they have been vetted by civic contract and they are more under their control. This is my understanding, that simply government believes that maybe the next time the judge members of Supreme Judicial Council will not vote unanimously for prosecuting another judge, and that is why they need to launch this procedure only with 5 votes, which means that even if judges will be against this, the members of Supreme Judicial Council, which have been elected by Parliament, again will be able to allow the criminal prosecution, and even arrest of judges.
Okay. In related news, on Thursday, opposition members held a protest aimed at the EU ambassador to Armenia, Andrea Victorin. At issue is that despite the international NGOs reaffirming their statements decrying the degrading norms of democracy in Armenia, Victorin does not see any issues with the judicial system and has turned a blind eye to the government's pressure on judges, to parliamentarians verbally bullying reporters, and passing legislation limiting freedoms of press and expression, and more. 2 weeks ago, the EU passed a resolution praising Armenia for its, quote, commitment, unquote, to democracy that mentioned nothing of the jailing of the opposition mayors, attacks against free speech by passing repressive laws, and the selective use of those laws to protect Pashinyan and the ruling regime, as well as to persecute the opponents of the regime. Benyamin, I wanted to ask you if you think that the EU is giving Pashinyan a carte blanche in internal Armenian politics, and if so, what's Pashinyan's end of the bargain?
Okay, very interesting question. Frankly speaking, I am not sure that EU gives carte blanche to uh, Pashinyan, and I don't believe that they are doing so, hoping that at the end of the day, Pashinyan will ditch Russia, becoming anti-Russian, and that is why they are acting like this. I believe it was President Dwight Eisenhower who said this famous thing about Guatemalan dictator, like he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. No, I don't think that EU has some hopes that, okay, at the end of the day, current Armenian government will again make a U-turn, will again to criticize Russia, will again launch criminal investigation against Russian companies, like at the beginning of their rule in the second part of the 2018, and that is why they are turning blind eye to these actions. Yes, definitely we may see more active EU, but my understanding is that, look, as far as I understand, European Union, they need some time to collect evidences and then make some decisions. So my understanding is that in any case, they are receiving signals that something is wrong in Armenia from point of view of liberal democracy, and definitely this will make some impact on the, at least now, I believe this makes impact on the internal, these discussions on the internal debates, but I don't exclude that at the end of the day, there will be also some public statements. For example, 1 or 2 days ago, when United States ambassador met with prosecutor general or with head of police, the American embassy in their statements, there was a clear line that they discussed also the issues of judicial independence. And the ambassador emphasized this issue that the independent judiciary is very important for Armenia. Why? While when we read the press release of police or prosecutor general office, there was no mentioning of this fact. Of course, for example, American ambassador or American embassy is making much tougher statements in Georgia, criticizing Georgian current government for violating democratic rules. But I believe that we see that slowly both the European Union and the United States, especially EU delegation and United States embassy, they will change their mind because they definitely are receiving more and more signals from opposition, members of parliament, from general opposition, I believe from some local NGOs who are trying to be involved or are involved in human rights protection and other activities. But again, I don't believe that, okay, there is a bargain that, okay, current Armenian government can do whatever it wants because US and the EU hope that at the end of the day, they will ditch Russia and become anti-Russian. Because look, I believe the Europeans and Americans are realist persons, and they remember quite well that when this government took office in May 2018, the main slogan was restoration of Armenian sovereignty. There was no mentioning of Russia, but it was very thinly veiled in towards Russia. But now all understand that now Armenia is much more dependent on Russia than any time after 1991. And then current government doing whatever Russia wants from them. Yes, maybe part of the current government hates Russia, but no one is interested in their personal feelings. People are interested in their deeds, and they see that, okay, this government mostly does everything which Russia demands, and I don't think that there are some real conditions or base to think that in the midterm perspective, within months or even within years, the government will make another U-turn and again will criticize Russia and speak about restoration of Armenian sovereignty. So neither EU and the United States, I believe, they have neither legal nor moral base or nor even geopolitical base or geopolitical reasons to cover current Armenian government because, again, as I mentioned, US wants as less Russia in South Caucasus as possible, but current Armenian government are more controlled by Russia than any government starting from 1991. Even Robert Kocharian, which is presumably the most pro-Russian politician in Armenia, even Kocharian was more independent from Russia than current Armenian government. And I believe that Europeans and Americans know this very well.
Moving forward, in an interview on Russian television, Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko foreshadowed that Moscow would try to build what he called a union of sovereign states, which of course evokes a reincarnation of the Soviet Union, and that Armenia would have no choice but to join it. He raised a shitstorm in Armenia by saying, Armenia has nowhere else to go. Do you think anyone needs them? So, are such undiplomatic and off-the-cuff expressions unique to Lukashenko, or is that a result of the absence of respect many statesmen have today towards Armenian leadership and by extension towards Armenia, which lost all of its geopolitical significance by losing the 44-day war in 2020, losing control of Artsakh, and since then bungling its negotiations with Azerbaijan and Turkey, losing its sovereign territory, and putting its people and independence at risk. The only thing Armenia hasn't lost is the leadership that lost the war and is now losing the peace. So, Benyamin, do you think anyone needs Armenia? And I'm asking that provocative question more because I want to know about the potential of this quote-unquote Union of Sovereign States, which we're having fun calling the new USSR, the Union of Sovereign States around Russia. Do you think it wants or needs Armenia in the Union? And if so, does Armenia have a choice or alternative to joining it?
Look, first of all, Lukashenko, Belarusian president is a rude guy, and this is not surprising for me. He made several very rude statements, not only about Armenia, but about many else. But for me, of course, it's very bad when someone uses rude words about your country, but let's forget about packaging and let's go into the essence. So what Lukashenko was telling, the essence was this, that unipolar world marked by absolute US hegemony is over. Now we are in a transformative phase from unipolar to multipolar world. Russia will be one of the key pillars of this new multipolar world, and Russia as a pillar will have influence on some other states, mostly on former Soviet states, and the Russian pole will be comprised not only by Russia, but also by several post-Soviet states, among them Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, presumably even Ukraine and Turkmenistan. So I can assure you that if this type of paper will be published by, I don't know, prominent American political scientists like John Mearsheimer or Stephen Walt in Foreign Affairs or Wall Street Journal or Financial Times, that the world is moving towards the multipolarity. Russia will be one of the polars, and the Russian pole will be consist of several post-Soviet state countries. No one will be insulted. No one even will be surprised. And many will say, yes, there are very clever men and they are things right, and they are saying right things. and we will listen such reactions also from Armenia. So for me, yes, Lukashenko, Belarusian president, is a rude man, but let's forget about his rudeness and let's go to the essence. And
To,
frankly speaking, the essence is that really world moves towards multipolarity, and definitely Russia, at least until half of 21st century, will be one of the leading pullers of this multipolar world, along with United States and China, or maybe along with United States, China, and European Union. And definitely, Russian pole will comprise not only Russia itself, but also some other states. And of course, Armenia, let's put it this way, most probably Armenia will be part of the Russian pole, or let's paraphrase it this way. Armenia has much more chances to be part of Russian pole than to be part of Chinese pole or to be part of American pole in this emerging multipolar world.
mhm.
So, but to put this in this way that no one needs Armenia, okay, I may say that most probably, for example, Laos or Myanmar or Cambodia will be part of Chinese pole. So, but can we say that okay, who no one needs Laos or no one needs Cambodia? That is why they will be part of, for example, China's pole. And I'm sure that United Kingdom will be part of American pole. Definitely, Canada will be part of American pole. Australia, New Zealand, probably maybe Japan and South Korea. But can we say who needs a United Kingdom? That no one needs United Kingdom. That is why United Kingdom will be part of American pole. So I believe that this is a little bit uh, provocative and even manipulative
Exactly the
statements
word.
because
Yeah.
if we are going into the multipolar world and there will be 3 or 4 poles, and these 3 and 4 poles will be comprised not only by themselves as the countries, but also by some other countries. That again, if someone now will go to the London and ask, okay, nobody needs United Kingdom, and United Kingdom has no choice than to be a part of American pole. I may ask another question. Do you believe that United Kingdom has a chance not to be a part of American pole, but has a chance to be part of Chinese pole or to be part of Russian pole? I have great doubts that United Kingdom has any choice to be part of Chinese or Russian pole. Or, for example, can Australia be part of Chinese pole? I don't think so. But
Right.
can we say that, okay, Australia has no sovereignty because he has no chances not to be part of American pole?
You used the exact word I was going to use, provocative and inflammatory, as a matter of fact.
Obviously, he wouldn't use that language against Aliyev, right, or anyone else that's powerful enough.
Okay, frankly speaking, I don't think that Mr. Aliyev is powerful enough, especially if we compare it with Russia.
Yeah.
But regarding Armenian choices, at the end of the day, every country have choice. For example, for example, I don't think that President Biden put a gun on the forehead of Australian Prime Minister and say you should sign this AUKUS deal. No, and definitely Armenia can make a choice. Armenia can say to Russia, look, guys, I don't want to be a member of Russian pole. I want to be a member of American pole. Or I want to be a member of Chinese pole. But because China is not very much interested in South Caucasus, at the end of the day, South Caucasus should be either part of American pole or Russian pole. Of course, Armenia may say that I want to be a part of American pole, and no problem. But let's not forget that in Russia that in Nagorno-Karabakh we have Russian troops. If Armenia is going to be part of American pole, it means that Armenia accepts and agrees that Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh will be part of different poles. Is it okay
Yes.
for Armenia? Okay, if it's okay, no problems.
Speaking of multipolarity, Benjamin, in your most recent paper, you discussed how the U.S. Rejoining the Iran nuclear deal, also known as the JCPOA, can revive Armenia's north-south corridor politics. Is there any kind of opportunity for Armenia to regain some modicum of control over its direction? And how would you assess the statements of Iranian diplomats in Armenia also touting this north-south corridor?
If I will try to be very short and precise, even if United States and Iran will reach deal to restore JCPOA, and my understanding is that they are very close to this. This definitely does not mean that our Iran-US relations will be sound enough, because US has other big problems with Iran. These Iran regional activities, which Washington uh, believes they are malign activities, and also this Iran ballistic missile program. So, regarding Iran's role in multipolar world, Iran has two chances. They are never going to be part of Russian world because they don't trust Russia and they don't trust Russia for the last 200 years or even more. So Iran has two chances. Iran can only be a part of American pole if there will be a revolution in Iran. This theocratic system will be collapsed and some liberal democratic republic will be created in Iran. Of course, it will be very chaotic process and terrible process, like the process which we are witnessing in Iraq starting from 2003. But in any case, Iran can be the part of American pole if there is a no theocracy and there is a so-called liberal democratic Iran, even with domestic instability, maybe even de facto breakup of country, maybe the declaration of independence of Balochistan, of the Shia Arabs, and etc., etc. But this is the only way when Iran can be a part of American pole. If theocratic system remains in the place, Iran will be part of China pole, and this is my vision. Again, even if JCPOA is restored, this does not mean anything that okay, Iran will be part of American pole. No, as far as the theocratic system is in place in Iran, Iran is not going to be part of American pole. Iranians does not trust and does not like Russians. So the only way is to be part of Chinese pole on the strategic level. Of course, it does not mean that Iran will not have regional politics. Of course, Iran still will pursue its influence in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, so-called Shia arc. But on the strategic level, this will be within this China pole framework. Now, regarding the South Caucasus, Iran, from South Caucasus, Iran wants only one thing: less United States and less Israel. At least as far as Iran is theocracy. And in this case, Iran understands that, okay, to have less Israel and less United States, you should have more Russia, no more Turkey. Because even if Erdogan will fight or will criticize Biden every day, more Turkey in South Caucasus at the end of the day means more United States in South Caucasus. So if you want less United States and less Israel in South Caucasus, you should also want less Turkey in South Caucasus and more Russia in South Caucasus. Now, coming to the Sunni, Iran understands that if Sunni will be under the de facto control of Turkey and Azerbaijan, I emphasize the word de facto, which does not mean we will see the Turkish and Azerbaijani flags in Goris and Kapan, like we see them in Shushi. But de facto control means Azerbaijani Turkish businesses entering Sunni, Azerbaijani and Turkish population entering Sunni to serve these businesses. And maybe in 2040, we will have 50% of Sunni Mars population as Azerbaijanis or Turks. This for me means de facto control of Sunni by Azerbaijan and Turkey, which will create this direct land corridor between Azerbaijan and Turkey, and which mean much more stronger Turkey in South Caucasus, which itself means stronger United States and stronger Israel in South Caucasus. So Iran wants only one thing: to prevent transformation of Sunni on the de facto Turkey and Azerbaijan controlled territory. How you can do this? Of course, Iran will never send troops into the Sunni, and Russia will not allow this, as far as Russia are in South Caucasus, because Armenia is a part of Russian pole. So there is no possibility to send troops. But what Iran can do, Iran can somehow try to boost the Sunni economy to keep Armenians there. Because at the end of the day, even if Russian troops are in Armenia, but the 50% of Sunni population will be Azerbaijanis, Turks somewhere in 2050, de facto control will be at least the Sunni will be divided between Russia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan, let's say this way, which is not in Iranian interest. So Iran is interested to see economic boom or to boost Sunni's economy to keep Armenians there as a strategic leverage against de facto penetration and control of Sunni by Turkey and Azerbaijan. Now, regarding this north-south corridor, when we speak about transportation or infrastructure corridor, we need two things: either railway or highway. I don't think that anyone speaks about north-south corridor as an airplane corridor. So, as there is no railway connecting Armenia with Iran via Sunni, and I am afraid this railway is not going to happen because Armenian government, neither government under Sarkisyan nor government under Nikol Pashinyan, is doing nothing to even remotely make possible of construction of Armenia-Iran railway. So railway issue is closed, unfortunately. Instead, Armenia is telling that I am ready to launch Armenia, Yerevan, Nakhchivan, Syunik, Horadiz, Baku railway, which also means Armenia, Nakhchivan, Iran railway. So if we speak about North-South corridor as a railway corridor, this will work, but it will not pass through Syunik because there is no railway through Syunik, but it most probably may pass through Nakhchivan, which means that it will be North-South corridor or Persian Gulf Black Sea corridor, which can connect this Bandar Abbas, Persian port of Bandar Abbas in Persian Gulf to Georgian Black Sea port of Poti in Batumi, but it will not only pass through Armenia, but also through Azerbaijan, because Nakhchivan is Azerbaijan. And we all know that there is a railway connection from Iran to Nakhchivan. So this is first. Second, the second option of corridor is highway corridor. We all know that we had this international M2 highway, Yerevan, Goris, Kapan, Megri, Iran. And Pashinyan government in December 2020 delivered this 21 kilometer of this highway under Azerbaijani control. They promised that they have an oral agreement with Azerbaijan, that Azerbaijan will make no obstacles for Armenian and Iranian drivers and trucks and cars to pass through this 21 kilometer. But we all know that starting from November 11, 2021, this road is closed for Armenians, at least. Yes, we have alternative highway, but this alternative highway is worse than this M2 highway. I mean, alternative highway which connects Goris to Kapan, and thus Goris to Megri and Yerevan to Megri in Armenia with Iran. But this alternative highway is worse than the original highway. But let's not forget that even original highway was not suitable for large-scale transit of huge cargo through trucks. So the original highway was not suitable for large-scale highway north-south corridor. Now we even have worse highway, alternative highway, which is less and less suitable for this international transit highway. And only we have discussions that presumably new highway can be constructed from Sisian to Kajaran and then from Kajaran to Megri through some more than 10 tunnels and etc. etc. Then probably EU is ready to guarantee for 600 million euros of loans, which Armenia may receive to start the Sisian Kajaran construction. But all these are discussions. One thing is clear, that Armenia needs minimum 8 years, best case scenario, to construct this new highway from Sisian to Kajaran and from Kajaran to Armenia-Iran border, which means that even in the best case scenario, we will never have a
We're talking about 2030.
connection. Yes, 2030 and about highway connection, not railway connection. But then big question rises, if this railway will be opened, Armenia, Nakhchivan, Iran, and it will function successfully, then logical question rises, why there could be no highway connecting Armenia with Iran via Nakhchivan? If railway functions, highway also may function. And if there will be highway connecting Armenia with Iran via Azerbaijan, via Nakhchivan, and this highway is passing through plateau and you can reach Nakhchivan-Iran border from Yerevan within 2 hours, what international bank are going to put 1 billion, not 1 billion, sorry, the construction of these two sections, Sisian, Kajaran, Megri, will require minimum $1.5 billion minimum. So what international investment bank or multinational bank, World Bank, IMF, EBRD, EIB, Asian Development Bank, who is going to fund this $1.5 or even theoretically $2 billion Sisian, Kajaran, Megri highway for Armenia to reach Iran, if Armenia is reaching Iran via Nakhchivan within only 2 hours? So frankly speaking, all this does not make sense for me.
Benyamin, a very quick question to finish the topic for the sake of time. Are the problems political or financial?
I believe both political, financial, and even, I will say, logistical and logical. Again, if Armenia will have a railway and highway access to Iran via Azerbaijan within 2 hours, no one outside Armenia will put money to us to create another secure connection with Syunik.
Yeah.
Armenia should do that.
Political.
And frankly speaking, yes, it's political. And one very short observation.
I was just asking, like, if somebody suddenly came up with $1.5 billion, would those projects get realized or would they bog down in politics?
No, I believe that this project will be realized because Iran is not, again, for Iran, there are no problem. Okay, they can have connection with Armenia, highway, railway, both via Nakhchivan and also via Syunik.
Okay.
But the most interesting part is Armenia to have direct access with
Right.
Iran, because if our access is via Nakhchivan, which means it's via Azerbaijan, it means that Azerbaijan received another huge leverage on Armenia, because every time when President Aliyev has some bad dreams, he can simply close this, create some complications for Armenian cars, trucks, and trains to pass through Nakhchivan and to reach Iran.
Okay.
And when we're speaking about this $1.5 and $2 billion, okay, this is a huge amount of money for Republic of Armenia. But if we compare also the diaspora money, this is not very huge amount of money. And one of the very prominent Iranian experts says this directly to me back in 2017. He said, okay, we heard a lot of things that direct railway and new highway connecting Armenia to Iran via Syunik, this is a strategic priority for Armenia. And he says that also we all know that Armenian diaspora and capital is approximately $400 billion. I'm not sure why he thinks that Armenian diaspora capital is $400 billion, but in any case. And he said that from my understanding of direct railway and highway connection, Armenia-Iran via Syunik, it's a issue of strategic importance and of national importance for Armenia. It should be no problem to get that funding from diaspora, this $2 billion or even $3 billion. But because we failed to do that, I have only one understanding, that this is not a national priority for Armenia.
I'm going to go on the limb and say that's a pipe dream. We should move this forward.
So the polling outfit MPG released results of its newest poll of Yerevan residents, which we thought was interesting to bring to you. A potpourri of questions were asked, ranging from municipal issues to geopolitics. We'll focus on the latter today because that's what we like. But first, a quick comment on methodology. There were all the questions were over the phone. 800 people were polled. Plus or minus 3.5% is the error margin, and the poll were conducted in late February and late January and early February, all through Yerevan. One of the questions, so the first question that we want to focus on December 16, the Yerevan Avakani, or the city council, essentially held a no confidence vote against Hovik Manucharyan. When asked if Yerevan residents approved of this move, only 11%, 3.9% fully, and 6.9% somewhat said yes, and 25% had difficulty in responding, but a resounding 72% were against this. How do you think this may manifest itself, Benyamin, in the future in the Yerevan politics? For instance, I'm thinking about the 2023 elections coming up.
Okay, the poll showed that more and more people are being disappointed from Pashinyan, and my understanding is that the gross number of people who are disappointed from Pashinyan, there are people who are disappointed because their socio-economic conditions are becoming worse and worse. Because those people who have been disappointed from Pashinyan for geopolitical reasons or for patriotic reasons, because of loss of Artsakh and etc., definitely they were disappointed from Pashinyan immediately after the 2020 war. So now we see that those part of population who were not maybe very much interested or not very much upset by Artsakh loss, now also they start to question Pashinyan's ability to govern, because they have to pay more and more, and the incomes are not rising, which means that they are able to consume less and less. But for me, most important thing of this all IRI poll was the poll regarding what do you think about the future of Nagorno-Karabakh.
So this was not an IRI poll, this was an MPG poll.
Because also there was a International Republican Institute poll.
Yeah, we covered that last week a little bit.
But the key for me is issue regarding this Nagorno-Karabakh, when majority were telling that, okay, they believe that Karabakh either should be part of Armenia or independent country or even part of Russia. And I believe very few, if there was any answer that, okay, we believe that Karabakh should be part of Azerbaijan. And this is very important for me because we know that we have this propaganda inside Armenia, and also partially emanating by our Armenian government, that Artsakh is lost. We have to accept Artsakh loss. We can do nothing for Artsakh. We should concentrate on the Republic of Armenia. We should try to thrive economically. Yes, it's terrible that we lost Artsakh, but we have to accept the loss of Artsakh. But interestingly, very few people in Armenia at least publicly, are ready to say that yes, we believe that Artsakh should be part of Azerbaijan. And this gives me some hope that despite all this propaganda, which trying to convince people that, okay, please accept the loss of Artsakh, this was a terrible, but we have no alternative, nothing can be done. So we should concentrate on ourselves. Russians will deal with Artsakh. Artsakh is not Armenia problem. It's Russia-Azerbaijan problem or Russia-Azerbaijan-Turkey problem. We are not even under this propaganda and under this war trauma and etc., etc. But still, absolute majority of Armenian society is not ready to say that yes, Artsakh is Azerbaijan and full stop.
Right. And if you go back to the IRI poll, which we covered last week, the more urban you are, the more anti-Pashinyan you are. This poll, which was released 2 days ago by MPG, also sort of seems to indicate that. So that's what my question was. Like, do you think that, for instance, the Yerevan elections in 2023 can be a launching pad for a new, opposition, or someone who could potentially basically first take over Yerevan and then eventually at the national level? Essentially, what does this mean that when 72% of the population of Yerevan disapproves of the city council, what effect can that bring in terms of countrywide politics?
Taking into account that Yerevan is okay, if you take into account population, Yerevan population is 40% of Armenia's population, or at least the 40%. According to official data, is maybe 37, 38, but real it's minimum of 40%. And we all know that unfortunately, in last 30 years, we didn't develop or create a country. We create a city country, something like ancient Greece, because it's Yerevan and everything else. So Yerevan is really very important for all aspects, including political. Yes, 2023 municipal elections in Yerevan can be the beginning of the end of Nikol Pashinyan, but if the third and second president will not participate either directly by their faces, or they will not push forward people connected with them very strongly. Because I'm afraid that even in 2023, in that case, if either, for example, the second or third president compete themselves, which hope will not going to happen, but if they will support the candidates which had close connections with them, like work with them as their assistants, advisors, ministers, or whatever else, even in autumn 2023, prime minister could use this and again to symbolize or concentrate this hate politics against them and trying to win these municipal elections. But if there will be a candidate even supported by Kocharian or Sarkisyan, but who has no personal or business or whatever connections with them, in that case, I believe there are quite high chances that civic control can be defeated. Of course, if they will not rig the elections. We are speaking about relatively free and fair election, but this also not guaranteed, unfortunately.
One of my concerns is that poverty is increasing. Essentially, it's a vicious cycle. It breeds new poverty, and this expands the ruling government's base, actually. So whether the former presidents abstain or not from the elections, I fear that the ruling government may be able to still sort of use their populist rhetoric to hold off essentially challenges in the future.
I agree with you, but also let's not, but just a few remarks that yes, I agree that poor layers of society, they are prone to populism, but also poor level of society, they are prone to anger when they start to live worse and worse. And unfortunately, the poor layers of Armenian society now lives worse than in 2019 or in 2018. We had the electricity price hike in February. Now, starting from April 1st, we will have gas price hike. So this also does not play in favor of current government. Yes, poor population are easily to be manipulated, but also poor population is very difficult to be manipulated when he facing more and more socioeconomic pressure. At least I think so.
The other question on this poll that was very interesting to me was that a question on Armenian-Turkish relations. And there were two questions. The first one was, should the Armenia-Turkish border be open? And the second question said, do you want to sort of remove ban on Turkish products? On the first question, 62% were against opening the border, which I think is like, it fits my understanding of the different polls that we've seen, like specifically the IRI poll last week.
And really contradicts the government's narrative.
Exactly. But also what was interesting is 38% supported removing the ban on import of Turkish products, which seems a little bit sort of contradictory. And as we know that the ban on Turkish products was removed in December, it was instituted during the war. So what is your thought about these different numbers? They're both against opening the border and at the same time in support of importing Turkish products.
Trade, essentially.
Okay, my understanding is that, look, the Turkish-Armenia border is closed or has been closed since April 1993, but we have Turkish products. So my understanding is that from population perspective, these are not going together. I mean, you may have closed Turkey-Armenia border, but you may have Turkish products. I believe many people think that, okay, Turkey is our enemy, or at least Turkey is our adversary, if we put politically more correct term. Because, okay, it's obvious that Turkey fully supported Azerbaijan in the destruction of Artsakh. And people understand that these minimum 4,000 people which have been killed and more than 10,000 have been wounded. And now when we see the destruction of Armenian churches, etc., Turkey is at least equally responsible for this as Azerbaijan. And so people think that the opening of Armenia-Turkey border is some sort of normalization, or maybe the start of even reconciliation, or it's an evidence that Armenia is forced to not to speak about Turkish role in Artsakh war, because maybe people think that, okay, if Armenian government will say that, okay, Turkey, you should be punished for bringing mercenaries into Artsakh, for example, then the border is not going to open, which means that if border is going to be open, it means that the Armenian government is not going to put tough questions on Turkey. But from another point of view regarding the trade, yes, no one is against trade with Turkey, because it's not only the issue of cheap Turkish products. Let's not forget that many things which are being produced in Armenia, starting from construction materials and ending with furniture, they are using Turkish raw materials. So a lot of producers who are producing in Armenia, both for domestic market and also exporting, they are using raw Turkish products, and they were facing significant difficulties when this Turkish ban was imposed. So it's not only the case that, okay, let's not import like ready Turkish products. I don't know, clothes, like soaps, liquid soaps, powder detergent, and etc. But also a lot of raw materials have been imported from Turkey, which have been used to produce the products in Armenia, both for the local market and also for export. So this Armenia-Turkish trade is a literally multi-layered one. So people are against opening of Armenia-Turkey border because they believe that this somehow is a continuation of humiliation of Armenia. But people want Turkish products because people were used to Turkish products in last 29 years, starting from 1993 or 1992.
And Benyamin, just exactly on that thought, when Armenians are saying don't open the border but continue with whatever Turkish products are already available on the markets, to me they are saying don't change anything, or this is not the time to change anything.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's continue status quo. Let's put it this way.
Exactly. Okay, so those were all the topics we had on deck. Time to get things off of our chests. Hovik, what do you want to talk about this week?
I'll preface this by saying it is my own opinion. Last week, the Armenian National Security Service reported on the arrest of 19 Armenian citizens who allegedly sold classified military information to fake, seductive, Armenian-looking women over the internet in exchange for hundreds of dollars in cash. Never mind that this coincides with the announcement about the parliamentary war investigation and the opposition's suspicions about cover-up. And never mind that according to statements released by the NSS, some of this alleged activity occurred after the disastrous war, where nearly 5,000 of their own fellow servicemen perished. Never mind trying to subject any of this information to a smoke test. And truly, I want to give my deepest respect to our men and women in uniform, a majority of whom are heroes in anyone's book. But let's assume that this is not a psyop suspected by some who claim that this is intended to degrade the fighting spirit of our soldiers. Let's assume that the videotaped confessions were genuine and didn't look rehearsed at all, like others claim. Let's assume that this allegation is correct, and I have no facts to claim otherwise. What has Armenia come to where not just one or a handful, but almost 20 soldiers would sell out their country, the safety of their comrades, and their own safety in the end, for a mere pittance? This is not the spirit that brought us victory in the first war, and this is not the spirit that allowed us to hold back the enemy for decades, including 2016. Isn't this more evidence that under the current regime, Armenia is in the process of irreparable decay in morale that makes people question basic facts about the ability to provide security for its people, for my family, and for yours? And if so, then isn't the imperative to act more urgent? Tell me why I'm wrong. And if you agree with me, then speak your opinion loudly. Don't stay silent. Now is not the time for apathy.
Okay. Benyamin, your thoughts?
Very few remarks. I would say that I will be very much surprised if within this coming week, okay, until February 20 or 21, we will have large-scale war in Ukraine, despite all these apocalyptic statements and assessment from President Biden, National Security Advisor Sullivan, Prime Minister Johnson, that, okay, Russia will invade on February 16, February 17, it will launch missile attacks, I don't know, like jet attacks, etc., etc. My understanding is that Russia has zero rationale to launch large-scale military invasion of Ukraine, only if Ukraine itself will not make some provocations.
Okay. Thank you, Benyamin. Thank you, everyone. We'll conclude our show with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our program for this episode of Groong Week in Review. We hope it has helped your understanding of some of the issues from this previous week. We look forward to your feedback and suggestions for issues to cover in greater depth. Contact us on our website at groong.org, that's Groong, and on our Facebook page, ANN-Groong, or in our Facebook group, Groong-Armenian News Network. Special thanks to Laura Osborne for providing the music for our podcast. I'm Hovik Manucharyan, and on behalf of everyone in this episode, I wish you a good week. Thank you for listening, and talk to you next week.